This is Fit to Succeed in partnership with NordicFitnessEducation.com with host Ben Pratt.
Quite difficult for the people in the other communities to understand the difference between perhaps a less educated personal trainer or someone even just calling themselves a personal trainer, and then the ones who are more highly skilled. So
And here's some great highlights from part one.
But you're right, we do often reward length of service or length of experience. But look, if you've been doing a terrible job for 20 years, that's not going to make you any better at it. It's only going to make you better at doing that terrible job.
But there are lots of issues. So things such as the education, which doesn't match up to the reality of the job. A lot of initial education, which is too short. General issues around where the scope of practice is for a personal trainer, what kind of role the personal trainer should be playing in people's health and well-being, and some of the, we look across the sector, some of the job roles and career development pathways in the industry.
You know, maybe just you and you feel the people around you are competitors and you don't have a referral network yet and you don't have a mentor to help you build one, so you don't want to refer your clients away. So I can definitely understand that pressure to do that and try and be everything to everyone. And that could absolutely lead to those misconceptions.
Where I think the opportunities lie is to look at how can we match up this group of people who really want to help people to improve their health and well-being, fitness, lift better, move better, be happier, with the expectations of their role. And that's where things like the education and having high quality job roles in the fitness industry come in.
Let's jump straight into part two. The way I see this is that we are moving further and further into the modern times where the changing health demographic that we're seeing in the Western world is impacting, trainers in those kinds of decisions, because more and more of the clients that they're likely to be facing are going to have health concerns that potentially might warrant referral. And so it's becoming a more common issue, and perhaps even the majority of clients have something, maybe even if it's just high blood pressure, they're likely to have something that could warrant you to have to liaise with someone who's a professional in that field. And so, how do we help trainers to make the best decisions they can without putting themselves at risk? Because even a doctor has to work on the basis of first do no harm. But I don't really see that thought process embedded into the ethical thoughts of a personal trainer. I kind of riffed a bit there, but any thoughts on that?
I 100% agree with Dan's point of view as well about working. I don't think they're conflicting. I agree that working in an ideal world, like working with other medical practitioners, something like 100% health medical practitioner, like 100% support, and it's something I do as well as a personal trainer. Like I've got examples of where I worked effectively with someone with it was back pain. I had someone with long-term back pain for I think it was 10 years or something. He'd been going to the gym and he just hadn't been able to resolve it. I referred him to an osteopath. So I actually sat in on one of the osteopath appointments with him to understand what it was that osteo was doing. And the osteopath was able to do things that he had knowledge of the spine that I didn't have, and he was able to do things that I 100% couldn't do as a personal trainer. Like he was examining the exact architecture of his spine and how that related to the fitness. And then we used, in that example, we used the sessions that he was doing the osteo to then build into the fitness stuff. So okay, he wanted to deadlift heavier, but then we did a program of training over. We still worked together, but it was over a year working on deadlifts, but using the osteopaths and knowledge and information and the time of that session informing into the training sessions that we were doing. And I've got to say, like, also from an upskilling and a knowledge point of view, working with these really skilled, advanced practitioners, you learn so much. Like you learn their knowledge and how they approach things. As a trainer, so from an upskilling point of view, it's really helpful. But then at the same time, I think we also have to recognize that we're in quite privileged positions as well in terms of the knowledge and the expertise and the education that we have. So it's easier for us, aware that it's easier for us to be trusted when it goes into a medical setting, and treated more as an equal when it comes to working with physios or osteos, whereas perhaps like I could say off the back of a PhD, I can do that. Or you don't need to go to that extreme, but having a good basis of education and professional status can help when it comes to working collaboratively. One of the issues that we have across the fitness industry is how much variety there is within within personal trainers. So the term personal trainer, there's a lot within that. So you can have someone who's done, say, a 4 to 6 week training course, very little experience, and that's the same group of people who some of the personal trainers I interviewed for my research and my colleagues in the past, incredibly skilled, incredibly talented people, and they're all under the same job role as a personal trainer, because it's such an open job role, and it's quite difficult for the people in the other communities to understand the difference between perhaps a less educated personal trainer, or someone even just calling themselves a personal trainer, and then the ones who are more highly skilled. So we don't have, if you are going to be, for example, a physiotherapist, you would need certain level of professional status, and they're more of a group of people who are more easily categorized, like easily defined. And I think what we're seeing as a fitness industry evolving into, perhaps in the UK, we have you can become a chartered physical activity practitioner now, and so we're starting to see slightly more of a professionalization of what was the personal training field. But I think it comes down to professional status of or mutual respect between practitioners, because you can't just have a referral from personal trainers to medical professionals. Like, it needs to, as you say, it needs to be both ways. And I think it's more across when you look at the research that I've done and that other people have done, it's actually more I think it's quite challenging for personal trainers to develop those relationships. And so I think we just have to be realistic about, and also see that as an opportunity, about how we can develop better relationships between health and medical practitioners and the fitness industry.
Perhaps, Dan, if we take, I can see you eager to jump in there. If I get one more comment from Dan, and then we're going to change gears to a different subject. So Dan, go for it.
Yeah, sorry. I just, I think you raised some really good points here, but just for the purposes of maybe just getting people to think a little bit differently about this, maybe we don't want to be trying to be on par with other health professionals, because maybe we're just not capable of that. Like, personal trainers aren't even the peak exercise provider. Like, we've got exercise physiologists and strength and conditioning coaches that are all like extremely qualified, and their scope gets much more narrow. So they're good at those sorts of things. And in terms of like the specific types of exercise they can provide, they're absolutely brilliant. And so we want to be taken more seriously and be more professional as an industry, and I think that's brilliant. But it's probably referral is going to go more one way than the other way, and I'm not going to blame any individual trainer for not being super comfortable with that. It's about cultural change, and that might take another 20 or 30 years before the professionalism of the industry is really great. But when we've got professionals with a level 3 or 4 qualification, I don't think it's reasonable to expect to be able to have some of the conversations that we can have when we've got, like, as Alex identifies, he gets taken more seriously with a doctorate, and you would with a master's or a bachelor's degree as well. I think that's probably appropriate.
Yeah, good points for sure. And I kind of see this whole scope of practice thing as something that's been evolving over time. And one of the challenges is that as instructors, fitness trainers, personal trainers, we kind of try to be the jack of all trades, because and you could argue that's maybe a fundamental marketing thing, that we're trying to appeal to everybody. So we want to be able to have skills in every domain, rather than realizing, most marketing specialists will tell you, you've got to have a very strong niche. And your strong niche identifies who you are and the skills that you have. And that niche is what will bring you success, because you'll attract those type of clients. But yet, I still see from, 20 plus years in fitness education, people struggle to really put themselves in a niche. They constantly want to appeal to everybody. And, when we talk about scope of practice, well, it's hard to have a scope of practice that covers all eventualities. Like, Alex said earlier, you'd have to spend huge amounts of money on education to be sure you were professionally covered from your insurance, to be sure that you could meet all of those eventualities for all the types of clients. Even doctors specialize. They have specific things that they're very, very good at. And a doctor will refer someone to a specialist if it's outside of their general practitioner scope of practice. And I think that's important that we understand that. But this kind of brings us back to something that we started the conversation on a little bit earlier about this ability to take knowledge and understand that knowledge and learn to decide what to keep and what not to keep. And so it introduces, again, the phrase that we've said a few times, to critically analyze various information. Now, I would even suggest that, compared to where most personal trainers' education is, the term critically analyze doesn't come up a lot. That's something that those are skills that are often taught at degree level and beyond. Could perhaps between the two of you, we just try to put into a nutshell, what do we mean when we talk about critical analysis skills?
Okay.
Dan, do we start with you on that one, and we'll go to Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about critically analysing, we're talking about like interpreting the information that's in front of us and making a judgment on how accurate or how reliable that information is, and then how trustworthy and how much we're going to take on board. So I've identified earlier how hard that is and how we usually don't do it. And usually we don't need to a massive extent, but if we're, let's go back to that example about the stress book. And I think Alex raised this earlier. He mentioned, critically analysing that information. And that is definitely a skill that with sort of level 3, level 4 type qualifications, we're really going to struggle with that. So I like to teach people a few sort of, really simple skills and simple shortcuts around that, which might be around, first of all, identifying where our lack of knowledge is, and then spending a little bit of time thinking about, who else can I talk to? How reliable is this source? Why do I think it's reliable? Where's it from? Who's it written by? All that sort of stuff I think is super helpful, but it's something that takes a massive amount of practice, and it's really slow, and it's really effortful, and a self-employed trainer with money pressure just is going to be worried about the next client rather than spending an hour sort of looking up where this book's from and who wrote it. So I completely understand those sorts of pressures, but I think those are the sorts of skills we can encourage and try and embed in our professional practice.
Yeah. Alex, do you want to talk to us a little bit more about how you interpret critically analyzing?
Yeah, really similar, where it's about how you interpret information and then apply it. And it's actually, I remember from the research that I did for my PhD, it's a concern. One of the concerns that health and medical practitioners such as GPs have when it comes to, and physios, when it comes to personal trainers and fitness professionals, is the way in which we analyze information. And so whether the advantage of going to a trusted source of information, such as a scientific journal or a medical database, for example, is that it's more trusted and reliable, and you're also looking at managing the risk as well. And so when it came to medical referrals, the one of the concerns that medical practitioners had is that if they refer to personal trainers and fitness instructors, they won't be analysing and interpreting, relying on evidence-based sources of information, for example, which then places the client at risk. So that's one of the issues in terms of research. But in terms
sorry, just to clarify. So you're saying one of the reasons medical professionals feel unsure about referring to a fitness professional is because they don't believe that they have these skills to draw upon.
They don't believe they have the critical analysis and evaluation skills. So it's one of the issues that it has when it comes to linking between health, medical, and fitness is critical analysis. So it's really interesting that Dan's doing this research, looking at how we can develop critical analysis skills within students and within fitness practitioners, because that could potentially help to open the door to engaging with more communities, as we spoke about when we talked about scope practice. Yeah.
So I mean, I think if we kind of dial this back down to, I mean, what fitness enthusiasts, fitness trainers, what information are they likely exposed to on a daily basis? And for many of them, much of their spare time might be spent trying to drum up, new clients and understand their industry through social media. And so there's going to be a barrage of information that's coming to them every day. Probably, if they're anything like myself or other fitness experts I know, they're probably already following a whole host of people that they see as experts in the industry. And those people are likely, throwing out little snippets of scientific information here and there. How do we get a trainer from that position where they're just consuming little random bits of information and likely repeating those back to their clients, to getting to the point where they can really take on board, is that information reliable? Does it sit well with the things I already know? How do we get them to that level of analysis? Dan?
Yeah. For many, maybe we don't, because unfortunately that does require some skills that not everyone's going to possess. So that's a really unfortunate answer, but that's the case. So part of it is around improving educational standards in the industry. So our sort of certificate 3 or 4 qualifications we should see as a starting point, maybe rather than the standard. So we can look for and reward people with higher level qualifications where that's appropriate and where that's possible, because as we've identified, that's really expensive and time consuming, and that's not going to be for everyone. But when we get more of that in the industry, we then get more critical analysis, because you have to learn more of those skills when you're exposed to higher levels of education. So there's a bit of debate at university education about how well critical thinking is taught, even at that level. But there's no doubt you pick up at least some of those skills. You're not flawless by any stretch, as I'm sure Alex will be able to attest, but you're at least better at it. Mm-hmm. And then those people staying in the industry are then modeling it. So nothing's going to change quickly, but when you've got more people modeling that good analysis and that good behavior, other people are going to pick it up. So you learn from the people around you more than people that you don't know, because you tend to trust those people more. So if someone in that circle has that higher degree, or is modeling that like really discerning sort of behavior, and maybe rather than reading really, really widely, they read from a few really select high quality sources rather than just trying to absorb everything, then other people start to pick up on some of those things, and they start to pick up, like, even if it's just the really easy 1 or 2 things they can do. So that way we spread, and it might take a couple of generations of personal trainers, but we start to raise that standard.
Yeah, I think those are some great points. Alex, do you have anything to add to that?
I think the interesting thing about critical analysis skills is that they can be quite enabling for people. So when we look at personal trainers, like from a research point of view, of personal trainers use multiple different sources of information. It's not just going to be going to textbooks, it's going to be learning from the colleagues, looking at, as you say, social media, education courses, books. There's so many different ways in which we can learn, and actually that's really good, because there's so many different ways, so many different opportunities for learning, and ways which work around how you enjoy and benefit from learning. But then obviously, as Dan said, it's about where making sure that the information that you're using is reliable. And so I think what's quite interesting is, so as a personal trainer with a PhD, you'd think that I'd be always going to medical journals and textbooks, but the reality is that I use lots of different stuff to inform what it is that I'm doing. And actually, when we're talking about personal training at the highest level, at top level, it's understanding what's going to be safe for the client, so what's working within specific medical recommendations, within teaching exercise as well, working within your scope of practice and so on, but then also taking ideas from I take lots of ideas from social media. Like Instagram, personally, for me, has been really helpful. Like, I've learned so much which I can then apply with my clients, just in terms of exercise ideas, because the accounts you follow, there's some really brilliant, inspiring people on social media. So I think it's not a case of discrediting that information, because actually it's really helpful. It can be really helpful. It's a case of using the critical analysis skills that you have to then take that information and then apply it in such a way that's going to be beneficial and useful to your clients. And that's something that's been echoed across my research as well, when I was looking at I think sometimes it can be really difficult for personal trainers, because there's just so much information out there. It's almost like an information overload. Mm-hmm. And it can be just really confusing in all these different areas: psychology, nutrition, exercise, and it's quite overwhelming. And for a personal trainer, And so having one of the real strengths of having good critical analysis and evaluation skills is that it teaches you to try and provides a mechanism or a means for coming to terms with the fact that there are going to be lots of different sources. It's not necessarily going to be black and white, do this, don't do that. It comes down to a judgment that you're going to be making as a personal trainer with your client based on the information and the best knowledge you have, and the fact that you're accepting, at the end of the day, you're human, you want to do the best you can, and that it's not going to be, maybe what you do is not going to be perfect, but you just want it to be safe and effective and to help that person to achieve their goals.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of reminds me of, ultimately a trainer is trying to make the best choices they can based on the current circumstances and knowledge that they have. Sometimes those choices may not always be great, but hopefully that can continue to improve, as you've both sort of alluded to there. Now, one of the things I think about here is if we think about the fitness industry sort of from a bigger perspective, we've been talking a lot about the trainer and what choices they make, but actually the fitness industry has, as you said earlier, Alex, 64 million members across Europe. I don't know what the numbers are in Australia, Dan, do you know?
In terms of personal trainers, or
in terms of gym membership?
Oh, I would have no idea.
No idea.
No.
Okay. So 64 million gym members in Europe, and that's spread across 63,000 clubs. So that was research done by Europe Active and Deloitte that they identified that. Now, that's a vast number of people. And, to service even 63,000 clubs, you think in most clubs are going to have several trainers. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of trainers out there. And so these people are already interacting on a regular basis with the general population. Now, for me, I see that and my thoughts go to, well, there's a huge power for potential good there if we can ensure that the trainers are interacting in a positive way with the members of the general public. There's a huge power for good. What a potential impact they could have, particularly on things like public health, if they have the ability to do more than just say, I can give you a few sets and reps on an exercise. What are your thoughts about that? How could our industry make a bigger difference than they currently are in the public health domain? Now, we'll start with you on that, Alex, because I know it's kind of a big subject for you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, big things are education scope and having sort of situations which employment and cultures which support the personal trainers and fitness professionals to support the clients as best as possible. But actually, I think at the moment we're in a really interesting time. It's also a hugely difficult time with COVID and so on. But we're also in an interesting time in the sense of there's quite a lot of rebuilding and restructuring going on in how in the world, but also particularly in fitness as well. And we're seeing more of a move, for example, to online training. And also people who have not previously engaged with fitness are becoming more engaged with fitness. So, for example, we had Joe Wicks in this country when he did during the first lockdown. He had classes that he was doing for people via their computers, and the families were getting together and training with each other. From a health and well-being point of view, that the fact that we can use digital technology in a way to train people in a way that we hadn't in the past is such a massive opportunity. And to reach people who hadn't previously reached, but also at the same time, while the world is kind of reorganizing itself, we have an opportunity in terms of how health clubs and the fitness industry remodels itself as well around the different circumstances. So yeah, a big opportunity. As you say, so the fact that we've been able to get so many people engaged, fitness has been able to engage so many people in what it is that we do is just such a massive strength. And how we bring it together. I think education, everyone, support from employers, making the most of the new technology is a big one. But then I think everyone also, we can easily see this sort of stuff as something which happens outside of us, but actually it's something that we are able to have a big influence on ourselves. So if you work as a personal trainer, if you work in fitness, you can have the opportunity, it can often start with yourself. So how can you make yourself the best you can be to upskill, to serve your clients the best you can serve? With me, I did research, I did personal training. Every day I kind of get up and I think, how is it that I can help these people that I'm serving? Is it to do more research? Is it to more look up a certain condition? Is it to research a new exercise? So I think it starts with ourselves system level things could certainly be improved, but I think it's something that's also developing and constantly evolving over time as well, and it's something we all have a role in.
Dan?
Yeah, I might just talk more about the sort of psychological side of things here, and think that when we as a professional, we tend to, we've talked about confidence before, but I think we also tend to overpromise a little bit because of that. And part of that is because of our own personal experience. So when you're a fitness professional, like, most of us have an interest in exercise. We've been able to exercise ourselves. Maybe we've had some success with muscle gain or weight loss or sporting performance or whatever it is. So we tend to, that's the most available example of how it should go to us, is our own personal experience, and then the experience of people around us. So we often tend to overstate the effect we could get for a client. And I think if we were then trying to estimate how many people could achieve that same result, even like a modest result of whatever weight loss or muscle gain we were able to achieve, we're probably overstating how likely it is for a client to achieve that as well. So again, understanding the pressures of trainers trying to retain clients and having financial pressures, but sometimes the whole adage of under promise and over deliver, I think, is a really valuable one, because you're disappointing fewer people when they don't achieve their goals, but you're retaining the people that do. Like if you recalibrate those expectations and change the language around what you're trying to achieve and why, that's someone you can hold on to really long term for years and years and years. Because that client then trusts you and knows that you can achieve whatever relatively modest goal that was. And related to that, I think there's a bit of a push sort of moving away from the body image focus that's really coming in the last, I think, 5 or 10 years. It's been really big. The focus on muscle gain and sort of figure competitions and things like that have become far more popular. And at least in my circles recently, I've seen a bit of a push away from that and more towards like the health benefits and the social benefits, and some of those more long-term approaches to exercise as a way of improving quality of life and for enjoyment and those sorts of things. So as exercise professionals who are relatively entry level for most of the industry, at least, I think focusing on that side of things, on the health, on the enjoyment, on the sustainability, will help you, retain those clients over a longer term, because we're helping them meet some of those goals. So it's about changing the way we talk about exercise and fitness with our clients, I think.
Yeah, I like that piece, because you're starting to get into this concept of how do we help clients adhere to exercise in the longer term.
Right.
That's such an important piece, because if you get a client on board, you're trying to stay in scope of practice, all of these kind of things. But most importantly, we need a longer term adherence. They must stick to what they're doing. That change needs to therefore be something they enjoy doing. Otherwise, chances are adherence is going to be a battle all the time. And to have that influence on public health, we've got to have people engage and at least some level of enjoyment out of it. Otherwise, it's quite likely they will fall off the bandwagon and no longer participate. So I totally agree. I also, just thinking of what Alex said there, this concept of needing to have a specialism. If we are going to upskill, if we are going to lean towards this idea of using education to be sure we practice within our scope of practice, well, then absolutely we have to consider, the need to specialize so that education is affordable and isn't so time consuming. If we're trying to pick up, knowledge in every possible area, it almost becomes an endless battle, whereas if we can say, as some of you guys have said today, I want to pick up a nutrition qualification. And Alex, you mentioned you did that because I need to be able to service this part of my potential client body. Well, then that is valid and it's valuable, because it will help you deliver professionally in a level that your clients are asking and demanding for. But maybe you don't want to have group exercise skills, because I'm not picking up clients who do that. So I don't need to be investing much of my mental bandwidth into that field, because it's not something I'm going to be doing a lot of. So it certainly leads to me to think that this need to have a specialism, and to accept that might be something I should be doing probably is important. Now, unbelievably, we've been talking for quite some time, and we've really started to explore some great areas. But I do think there's one question I want to kind of let's bring some of these divergent thoughts into one place if we can, and try to conclude with something of maybe a little bit more simplicity. So I wanted to see if whether we can align these two ideas, all right, to try and bring some conclusion to this great discussion. And that is, firstly, the need to manage the prevalent misconceptions and the overconfidence in potentially flawed knowledge that continues to pervade the fitness industry. It's definitely there, so we've got that on one hand going on. And then secondly, we actually need to empower the fitness industry to be able to tackle our public health needs that are growing in size and complexity. How do we take these sort of two sort of opposing ideals and try to come to some sort of successful resolution? Perhaps, Alec, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Dan. So.
Yeah, I think as a fitness industry, we could celebrate what it is that we have as well, like the strengths we have. We are able to offer people so many opportunities to engage in so many different forms of exercise and activity, whether it is personal training, whether it's group exercise, whether it's someone's interested in yoga or online fitness, or we have so many things that we're able to offer as an industry that's going to really encourage people and motivate and inspire people to be healthier, fitter, and improve their lifestyles and their lives, basically. Yes, there are issues across the fitness industry. I think education and professionalism, certainly things which could be improved across the sector. I think there are probably ongoing issues about how we develop people's knowledge. But I think when we look at all this, the systems can be improved. I think there could be better support structures, better, just really better implemented models. I've been part of very well-run health clubs. I've run my own business, and I've seen how you can develop things which are just, when something's well-run, when you have a culture which is a positive, supportive culture, that has such a massive impact on the team, retention of staff, development of people, and also that carries over to the members and the clients and helps improve them. So it's about the cultures that we have, the systems that we have, the education that we have. And then as personal trainers, it comes down to us as well, about how do we upskill the best we can to serve our clients the best we can. And I think it comes back to, what is it that we can do that will be the best that we can possibly do for our clients, whilst knowing that it's not going to be perfect. We are human at the end of the day, but we do what we can to keep moving forward and to keep helping people and supporting the populations that we work with.
Excellent. Thanks. Dan?
Yeah, I think one thing we've come back to a few times in this talk has been where that niche is, and the need for upskilling if possible. And for me, I think getting an appreciation of our niche as being like healthy populations and low risk populations, and doing a really good job with those practical one-on-one skills that we can really take advantage of, because we have more time with clients, and we can focus on the simple things, and we can do them really, really well. So if trainers rather than trying to chase to exceed their scope of practice, which we've identified as being such a huge problem as Mark's research has shown in the last few years, if we can get people accepting sort of their area and doing a great job within that area, rather than trying to do everything for everyone, like it's possible to provide basic healthy eating advice, to provide basic well-structured exercise programs that are still great and still engaging and interesting and keep people coming. So we can be that person. We don't have to be the injury management specialist. We don't have to be the performance specialist. We don't have to be any of those things. We can be the person that guides somebody through a lifetime of exercise and does it really safely and in a really enjoyable and sustainable way. So for me, that's the real key. And as a way of helping people sort of with lower level qualifications, appreciating that is, I think, understanding where other people's scope of practice fits and how we can work with them as well. So, having an appreciation of other professions and their qualifications. So if we're treading on their toes and sort of going into their territory, I think it shows a real lack of understanding and lack of respect of what they can do. And also understanding and being comfortable that we can do things that they can't really, really well. It's just the simpler stuff. And that's okay for most people.
Indeed, you reminded me as you were talking there of a guy I worked with some years ago, and his name was Lee. And I don't know if he'd ever be listening to this, but Lee was a fitness instructor. He was in his mid-30s, which is kind of unusual. Normally, the level 3 fitness instructors are or level 2 in the UK. Fitness instructors are quite young. It's their entry in. But he'd been in the industry a long time, and he'd been offered opportunities to go and upskill and pick up other skills, and he'd always refused. But he was a great fitness instructor. Everybody loved him. His face was on Employee of the Month more times than anybody else combined. You know, he did that job, and he did it absolutely brilliantly. Always had time for members. Did a great job there. And so I always remember, I was reminded of him. And initially, when I was there working on my degree, thinking, why doesn't he want to go further or do more? It was because he found what he was good at, and he did a really great job of it. And if that works for him, that works for him. And he serves people, and he retained and helped many people adhere to exercise for many months and years that I knew him. And so, you know, that kind of leans to what you said there, Dan. You don't have to always strive for the highest heights. You can do a great job at something that is, you know, there's great need for instructors, even if they don't have high skills. There is great need. But then on the flip side, I really appreciate what Alex has said, that, you know, there is a need to have systems in place to manage those who have higher needs, who need somebody who has a niche skill. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that perhaps employers could do more to support, you know, those specialisms in their clubs. I think Alex also mentioned that about having the right mix of people employed. But I also think our industry needs to do more to support this ongoing concept of education for the lifetime. You know, it's not just something we do at the beginning when we enter the industry. It's something that we should continue to do throughout our lives, and to do it from reliable, credible sources, because we need to have those critical thinking skills for sure. So just before we wrap up, I wonder, is there any final thoughts or comments that you guys would like to offer? Alec, we go back to you.
Yeah, I think that obviously there are lots of issues in this area, but I think at the end of the day, like, working as a personal trainer can be hugely rewarding. It's an area you work in, something you're passionate about, and you have the opportunity to help people to improve their health, well-being in their lives. And as you say, like, I think we just appreciate the fact that it is an amazing industry, and it can be an amazing area to work in, inspiring as well. So the idea of being able to work in something which is both your passion and your work is phenomenally powerful, and also really enjoyable.
Yeah, I think probably we could all second that, because, you know, we've all done considerably long spells in the industry. So yeah, absolutely, it can be a fantastic industry to work in. Dan, any final thoughts?
Oh, look, not much that hasn't already been mentioned. I spend much more of my time in education than hands-on with clients these days. So, but I do see that as well. I see students coming through who are really interested in not just being the best fitness professional they can, but also working with other people and doing a great job, and being a good, helpful professional and helping people achieve goals. And that's brilliant. And so that's one of the real key strengths of our industry. And I think, yes, supporting that and promoting trainers to become more qualified and more educated, and even in time expanding their scope of practice, I think is brilliant. So yeah, I'd encourage everybody to be looking for that next bit of information, but just assessing it a bit more carefully before we accept it blindly.
Excellent. It's been such an enjoyable conversation. I really appreciate both of your expertise, your thoughts and opinions, and also that you've been so willing to talk about the research that you've done and how that can potentially impact us as fitness professionals and enthusiasts going forward. I will, of course, link all the listeners up to both Dan and Alex's websites. We'll also, in the show notes, include their research articles that you can read if you want to know a little bit more about the work that they've done. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share via social media. You can also rate the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. If you'd like to know more about us, then check out our range of online courses at www.nordicfitnesseducation.com.